A very good evening to one and all present here. On behalf of the core team, Mental Health Webinar Series, and Dr. Suresh Kumar Murugesan, the team lead of this webinar series, and the organizer, the Department of Psychology, the American College Madurai, and the associating partners, Madras School of Social Work, Chennai, Red Pond Educational and Psychological Research Center, Madurai, Yellow Pond Counseling Center, Madurai, MS Chellamutu Institute of Mental Health and Rehabilitation, Madurai, and Psycho-Oncological Association, Turkey. I welcome you all to today's session 413. And today we have Mr. S. Abhineet with us as our resource person. He has completed his undergraduation at Variguda Institute of Research and Advanced Studies, and he has completed his MSc in Counseling Psychology at Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth and Development. And he is with us today to talk about the red flags in the ethics of a psychologist. And he is currently working as an assistant professor at St. Joseph College, Calicut. So we know that ethics are very important in every walks of our lives. And today we are going to hear from him what are the ethics of a psychologist and what are the red flags in it. Thank you so much for accepting our request, Mr. S. Abhineet. And we are very happy to have you here and looking forward to listen to you. Okay, so without further ado, now the session is over to you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Once again, thank you so much for providing me with this session to handle this session. I would also like to thank Dr. Suresh, sir, for giving me this opportunity to handle this session, even though he's not present here, I believe. Okay, so without further ado, I think we can start the session. I have a PowerPoint, I'll share it. Is the PowerPoint visible to everyone? Someone please.
It is visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. I believe we can start with the session. My objective of this session is to start off a discussion regarding ethics in psychology, because I believe that it's an important area, and why it's important to our culture is because we don't have a governing body for our for psychologists. We do not have an ethics committee for psychologists apart from RCI, that's specific to clinical psychologists. We do not have a governing council or an ethics committee for that matter. And also when it comes to subjects where students are taught, apart from being a small topic in counseling or a small topic in psychotherapy, I don't believe that this part is much discussed anywhere as part of our syllabus. So I believe a discussion regarding ethics is very important, because it's not only because it's important for our client's welfare, it's also important for the welfare of the counselor. Not all. So normally psychologists are not so much interested in ethics because they believe that it's almost always related to the welfare of the client. So we should be very cautious. It would be very risky for us. So that's not always the case. The ethics is not always for the welfare of the clients. Definitely, it's also for the welfare of the counselor. So I believe that the participants in this session are either psychology students or psychology professionals. So I would start the session. So hopefully we would have practicing psychologists with us here, so they can provide their inputs regarding ethics. They can share their experience where they have faced ethical dilemmas, where they have faced difficulty in choosing an ethical decision. So I can start the session. So I very much believe that you would cooperate with me. You would share your experience or share your knowledge regarding ethics in this field. Now, coming to my topic, the topic is red flags in ethics of a psychologist. So, since I think everyone are with the background of psychology, so I don't think there's a need to discuss the basic principles of psychology, basic principles of ethics. Like, the basic principles are do no harm, do non-maleficence, beneficence, justice, autonomy, etc. So I believe that everyone has a good idea about that. So I'm not going to touch upon that. And again, I'm not going to talk about ethical dilemmas. That's another vast topic where we face dilemmas regarding the ethics. So I'm not going to talk about these areas. I would be talking about ethical violations, not necessarily ethical violations. Ethical violations would come along in the discussion, but more than that, I intend to talk about the warning signs where there could be a possible ethical violations. I think that would be more clear when it comes to the topic. So without further ado, I think I can start. So I'm talking about, wait a second. Okay. So we'll start. So I'm talking about the warning signs where uh, you could possibly end up in an ethical violation, or you could possibly end up in a difficult situation. The first point I'm wishing to discuss is wishing for a relationship different than a client-therapist relationship. So in this case, what I'm going to say is you are a therapist, or and when I'm talking about with respect to this session, I'll be talking about always a client therapist relationship, but it need not always be necessarily that relationship itself, because it could be a teacher student relationship. As psychologists, we would be working, not only we would be working in a clinic, we'd be working in colleges, we'd be working in institutions. So it could be a teacher student relationship as well, it could be a colleague relationship as well. But in a broader sense, if you are considering the principles in a broader sense, we could apply this to all these relationships. But specifically, I'll be dealing with a client therapist relationship. So wishing for a relationship different than a client therapist relationship. So in this case, suppose you are the counselor, or suppose you are the psychotherapist, and you feel you need a relationship different, or you feel you need a relationship other than the client therapist relationship. There could be several warning signs for that, which means that this client is different from other clients which you see in everyday. So first one, feeling sexually attracted to or aroused by a client. So that's pretty straightforward. You would understand what is meant by that. So if you want another relationship, if you want a different relationship with your client, and when I say a different relationship, it need not be a sexual relationship every time. It could be a romantic relationship. It could be just a friendship. Maybe you're just looking for a companion. All these relationships come under this different relationship term. So the first one in that is you feel sexually attracted towards that client. So if you have a client, you find that client sexually attractive. um, you get aroused by that client. You try to flirt with that client. You would want to touch that client. All these are warning signs that that client is special for you. You are looking at that individual, uh, like within more than one relationship that is beyond the client therapist relationship. So that is very easy for you to identify if you're getting sexually aroused by a client. And again, when we come to ethical guidelines, this is very clearly mentioned that a counselor or a psychotherapist is prohibited from having a sexual relationship or a romantic relationship with your client. And it is justified because that would definitely why you shouldn't engage in a sexual behavior or a sexual relationship with your client, because definitely that would affect the client therapist relationship. That would definitely affect your objectivity to treat that client that is why we prohibit counselors or psychologists from engaging in a sexual or romantic relationship with that client. So that's very understandable. That's within the surface itself, you would know why that is prohibited. So I know that I cannot engage in a sexual relationship with a client. So okay, I know that, but I find a client sexually attractive. So what I do is, okay, I cannot engage in a relationship like that. So what if I terminate that relationship? I say that, okay, we can maintain contact. I'll terminate your relationship. I terminate our client therapist relationship. I'll refer you to so and so psychologist or psychotherapist for that matter. And after that, I'm trying to engage in a sexual relationship. Will that be a violation, or will that be an ethical violation? I would like to know how the participants think of it. I've shared the PPT, so this PPT is, I can't see if anyone is messaging. Did someone answer regarding to this?
Mr. Abhinit, I hope you are using your laptop, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if you click on the top, there is a toolbar and it shows chat there. You can
Yeah,
also
yeah,
view the
fine.
chat.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
So, dear participants, I hope you all understood what our resource person is asking for. He's asking for your response. Kindly put them in the chat box. Thank you very much.
So my question was, suppose I'm interested in a sexual relationship with my client. I know that that's an ethical violation. So I terminate the relationship with that client. I refer that client to another psychologist, and I try to engage in a sexual relationship with that client. Would that be considered an ethical violation? Because that particular client is no more my client, so we can have another relationship. So will there be any ethical violation in that? Okay, fine. Several of them have responded. It's still don't think it's ethical. Okay, fine. Okay, definitely, as you have said, it's not. It's still an unethical practice, and still we have an answer for that. It's not simply that we have several ethical practices, several unethical practices. All the practices, which all the ethical guidelines which are given are based on some basic ethical principles. So when it comes to this case, still even if I terminate the relationship, still there is a possibility that I could exploit the client. All the clients who come to every individual who comes to a therapist, they face some kind of difficulty. Some of them would be emotionally disturbed. Some of them would be vulnerable. Uh, some of them would be vulnerable so that others can take advantage of them. Some of them would be going through a tough situation in their life. Some of them would be going through a tough relationship in their life. So in that case, even if you terminate a relationship, whether you if you engage in any other relationship, that is basically because the initial professional contact you had. So that's clearly an ethical violation, still an exploitation. And for this presentation, I refer to American Counseling Association's ethical guidelines. So according to American Counseling Association's ethical guidelines, you cannot have a sexual relationship or a romantic relationship with a client at least up to 5 years after your last professional contact. Which means that if I had the last professional contact with my client today, I cannot have any other relationship with that client for the next 5 years. So it's pretty clear regarding that. So So that's regarding the first point, feeling sexually attracted. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're wishing for another relationship, if you're wishing for another relationship with your client, so this is not always the case. You may not directly feel sexually attracted, or you may not think of touching the client at all. There could be other possible warning signs that would indicate the same, which is you try to communicate with the client outside of the frequent sessions, so that okay, probably the contact sessions would be, you would contact them before the session, like you have session tomorrow, for that matter. So apart from that, you try to contact your client, or you would be thinking about that client outside of sessions. Definitely we would be thinking about our client outside session with respect to therapy, or regarding to what type of therapy we can what kind of therapy we can use, or we could be thinking about the situation of that client. Apart from that, if you're thinking about your client outside of the session, that's definitely a warning sign. And again, anticipating with excitement a certain client's appointment. So that's I find that pretty interesting, because the first 2 points, that those are really straightforward ones, we will understand. But the next one, anticipating with excitement a certain client's appointment, that's more of a subtle warning sign. You wouldn't notice that unless you are aware about this. Okay, so the session with your client is every Thursday. Consider that for the time being, consider that you have session with the client every Thursday. So Wednesday evening or Wednesday night, you are more excited. Wednesday evening, you are happy. Okay, tomorrow that client will come. So you're happy for that. Tomorrow you'll have a session with that client. So everybody will have best outfit for them, the dress they wear. So you groom well for Thursday. So you will definitely wash the clothes for you. You will definitely wash, get prepared. You will groom well. You would particularly select which dress to wear on Thursday. So that's more of a subtle way that you can find you're looking for a different relationship with that client, or you are not looking at that client the way you look at other clients. So that's one interesting way to identify if you are in any way wanting to have a relationship, wanting to have another relationship with your client. You would be anticipating that you would be anticipating the appointment with that client. You would be excited to have the session with that client. You would be grooming, you would be dressing well on that day. So that's again a warning sign that you would want a different relationship. Then another one is moving a clients are to accommodate a personal agenda. So moving a clients are probably it would be to the last session, like personal agenda in the sense, if you wish to spend more time with that client, you would probably move the session of that client to the last session, so that after that you can have enough time to spend together, whatever you want. If you want to go have a coffee or something, so you would probably move the session with the client to last. So it need not be like that always the case, because maybe you would just think that, okay, so I have the session with client, I have session with this particular client tomorrow. It would have been better if that particular client came last, or if it would have been better that if that client took appointment for the last session. If you think like that, that's again a warning sign that you look at that client in a not the same way you look at other clients. Even this need not be the case. It could be you can think of it in another way. So you have the session on Thursday. The client calls you. So the client, I'm busy in the morning. It would be the client is asking you. It would be better if I can have the session from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. So that's the last session. Okay, you say that, of course you can have that. Nobody has booked for that session, so we'll have session from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. If you feel happy for this, again, that's a warning sign. It's very subtle. It could be just that happy feeling would be happening for only maybe 2 or 3 seconds. A client called and they asked for this last session, and if you are feeling happy for that, if you are feeling happy that the client has booked your session to be the for the client has booked for the last session, and you're feeling happy for that, you have something, you have some kind of affinity towards that client which you do not have towards other clients. And again, these are warning signs. Every point I've discussed here is a warning sign that you are wishing for a relationship other than the client therapist relationship. And if you ask, is this an ethical violation? Definitely this is not an ethical violation, and I'm not specifically talking about ethical violations here. This could lead to an ethical violation. That's what I'm meaning. So maybe you would think about your client often, and maybe you would anticipate the client's appointment. Maybe you would groom well for that day. This is in no grooming well for a day is never an ethical violation. But if you're grooming well for a particular client on a particular day, on that day, that's not an ethical violation. But it means that there is something happening within you towards that client. So it would in future lead to any ethical violation that you would end up. So that's what I'm trying to talk about. So that's the first point, wishing for a relationship different than a client therapist relationship. So the next one is rationalizing boundary crossing or deviations from standard practice. So that's definitely rationalizing. We always try to rationalize what we do in a counseling. With respect to a counseling relationship also, you would try to rationalize your acts in certain point of time. So if at all ever you have said that this time it's different, maybe the boundary crossing in the sense, you and your you just have, see, in case of a client therapist relationship, what we have to understand is this: we have a customer. You do not have for the sake of this session, I'm saying a customer. You have a customer, you have a service to give them. They're seeking that service. You're providing them with that service. That service has a particular, you have a problem in front of you. You have a particular goal to attain. You have a definite path to attain. You have a particular goal to each session. So it's a very structured client therapist relationship. Client therapist relationship. You do not have to think about anything else apart from that. You do not have to think anything else about the client. You do not have to think anything in any other whereabouts about the client. So maybe the client, but it is the psychologist or it is the therapist who should be aware of these ethical guidelines or practices. It is not the client, and it's the duty of the psychologist to inform the client about their duties and responsibilities or their rights regarding ethics. So when it comes to rationalizing boundary crossing, maybe the client invited you to a party. So the client is organizing a party. So the client invited you, okay, you can attend this particular party. So in this case, you are attending the party, and that's definitely a boundary crossing because you are engaging in a practice that could lead to a dual relationship, or you are engaging in another commitment with that client, because at some point or the other this could definitely turn around, because the client could say maybe after so many sessions, the client's asking, okay, I am short in cash, could you lend me one session for free? And you say that, oh, that's not possible, this is your standard rate. And that's the case. And at that moment the client could, okay, but that day when I organized a party, you attended it, you had free drinks, you had free food for it, so what about that? So again, you are forced, you are in an ethical dilemma now, or this happened just because you crossed the boundary, you crossed the therapist client relationship. So when you does that, this need not always be party. You attended a marriage function, or you visited any of their loved ones, or you visited them in their home, or you had a casual, uh, you spent time with them outside the session. You both the client and therapist went out to have dinner together. All these practices come under boundary crossing. And if you ever try to rationalize it, if you ever thought that this time is different, or if you thought that everyone does it, all these are general rationalizing statement that we do make. So if we cheat in exams, we say, okay, no, I just cheated on exam, nobody's gonna get hurt, or everyone does it, no one will care. It's all these are rationalizing statements. So if you ever have done that, or if you ever have thought about this rationalizing statement, it's such a minor thing, nobody's gonna notice this, or this is not gonna affect anybody. Or you would say that, okay, the primary thing we should consider is whether am I hurting anyone else, but I'm not hurting anyone else, so this is completely fine. I'm attending a party, I'm not hurting anyone else, nobody is gonna care about that, this is just one time. All these are rationalizing statement. And if you are using this rationalizing statement, that's a warning sign that some kind of boundary crossing has occurred, and that could lead to a problem in the future. This is that's why I said that earlier I said that ethics are not always for the welfare of the client. It's definitely for the welfare of the psychologist also. Be it boundary crossing, be it romantic relationship, be it sexual relationship, whatever it is, at that moment you would think that, okay, both the parties want it, even my client is asking for, even my client is happy with it, so there's nothing wrong with that. But this will not go in this way for lifelong. After a point of time, maybe you both find that is not good. Okay, there's another fact, when you enter into another relationship with your client, that will definitely affect the objectivity uh, within the relationship. That's another fact. Beyond that, you would think that, okay, even if I'm not objective, that's going to affect the client, not me. That would only affect the relation, that would only affect the treatment, that is going to affect the client. That's never going to affect me if I'm having another relationship. But that's not always the case, because um, at that moment, if you're having another relationship with the client, maybe both of you would enjoy it at the moment, maybe both of you would continue with that relationship for a for a period of time, but definitely that will come to an end. Definitely you either of you or one of you would be tired with that relationship, or maybe you would think that okay, it's time for me to move out from this relationship, and that wouldn't happen so easily. We cannot just move out from a relationship even when you feel so. Like you had a again, this is not with respect to we don't have a counseling body. I'm referring to American Counseling Association's guidelines. So in that, with respect to relationship with clients, there is a last point discusses about abandonment and neglect. So if you enter into another relationship, definitely the client, if the client too wants it, definitely both of you will be happy. And after a moment of time, if you decide to move out from that relationship, the client may not want that. A client would be asking for you to continue in that relationship, and if you want to move out, definitely you will have to neglect that client, definitely you will have to abandon that client, and that's again an ethical violation. So it will again affect you. And looking it from the client side, suppose the client wants to move out from that relationship, definitely again you would want to continue that relationship. Again, the client would think that he or she was exploited by the therapist. They could again move to the ethical committee. So think having an ethical practice or being an ethical psychologist, definitely a way to live a happy professional life, because at some point or the other you would be having the tension, or you would be facing that okay, what if they report it. If you are having an ethical practice, if you are following an ethical practice, you would never want to think like that, what would happen if they report, or what am I going to do, anything like that. So coming back to this point, rationalizing boundary crossing, it's okay. I've talked about that. If you are ever boundary crossing, and if you are rationalizing, if you ever thought about any of these rationalizing statements like no one will care, or no one will get hurt, that's a warning sign that you have somewhere crossed your boundary, and that could lead to an ethical violation in the future. Next is personal ambition and financial gain. Again, we have a counselor-client relationship. Beyond providing your service to the client, you do not have any other relationship with the client. You do not have to think anything about the client. You charge a particular fee with the client. So that's all about the client counselor relationship. So if you have personal ambition, or if you have if you ever think that you can make a financial gain out of this, apart from collecting fees from this, you would definitely treat your clients differently, and that again violates our basic principle, that is justice. Being exceedingly ambitious to make it big as a mental health professional. So you would look at your clients differently. Definitely you would look at the socioeconomic status of your clients. You would look who is able to afford to more amount of money, who's able to afford to more number of sessions. So you would treat your clients unequally. That would be evident in your sessions. If you are more interested in knowing the socioeconomic status of your client, definitely there is some kind of ethical problems related to it. Maybe or another example is bartering with clients for services or tangible objects in lieu of collecting fees. So with respect to bartering is not an unethical practice unless it is requested by the client. Maybe every client do not have money with them. Maybe they have some other service they can provide to you. But the question is, but the important matter is, you should be the bartering object or the service which is bartered should be equal to the cost price of your service. Okay, you cannot give them 2 sessions and ask them for a 32-inch flat LED TV. That's not a bartering, is that's exploitation. So bartering is, if the client is in a situation where they cannot afford to the fees, they can have something, and they can give you any service they can offer, which is around the cost price of your sessions fee. But if you are bartering, if you initiate bartering instead of fees, that means you are looking for you are using your client for the personal ambition or financial gain. So that's another point regarding if you are looking for financial gain from your clients, you would be looking at your clients, you would be classifying your clients in terms of high socioeconomic status and low socioeconomic status. That would definitely affect both the parties. With respect to high socioeconomic status clients, you would be treating them with extra caution. With respect to low socioeconomic status clients, you wouldn't be giving the care you would have given to them. So that would again affect their treatment outcome. That's with personal ambition and financial gain. I'm not discussing each point. I guess it's already, we have 20 minutes more, I guess. So I'll move a bit faster. So needs to enhance one's own self-esteem. So and I would like to make one point clear here. I believe that all human beings are susceptible to humanly error, even that's possible in this when you're practicing as a psychologist. So if you feel that you have had some of these warning signs in your session, or if you have had that, if you felt that you have had some of these warning signs in your career, that's not something you should dread about, or that's not something you should be fearful about, or that's not something you should try to avoid. That's something you should uh, talk about. That's something which you should be more aware about. Maybe at some point or the other you try to groom well for a particular client. Maybe at some point you have felt good that okay, tomorrow I'm seeing this client. Maybe you have felt that that's definitely possible. I wouldn't say that theoretically we can say that okay, you should never be like that, but there is a humanly error is always possible. We are always susceptible to mistakes. So what we can why I'm saying this is even when you find these kind of warning signs or traits, it's always better you discuss about it, because at the end of the day, what's important is you do not practice unethical, or you do not do you do not engage in any ethical violation. So we generally say that the first step to breaking chain is identifying that you are chained. So the first step to uh, have an ethically sound professional career is that being aware of the warning signs that would lead to ethical violations. So if you're aware of the warning signs, you can be cautious, you can check on them earlier itself, so that you wouldn't reach to the extent that you are going to violate it. Even in case of relationships, relationships do not happen all of a sudden, or one fine day, one fine morning you do not engage in a new relationship with a client. That's a gradual process. Maybe one day you groomed well, the next day you give a smile to that client, the next session you reveal more about yourself, and in that with respect to in parallel to that, in your personal life, you had a divorce, so your partner left you, you're yearning for a companion. So so many factors will be contributing to that. So and maybe you already had reached a point you couldn't move out from having another relationship with the client. So it's much better if you identify these warning signs at first itself. So now coming to next point, needs to enhance one's own self-esteem. Self-esteem is definitely one important aspect for our career. It would help us to grow. It would help us to work harder. But if you are completely relying on our clients' words, or if you are completely relying on our clients to have a good self-esteem, that could definitely have negative effects on our client therapist relationship, because we can't always say that this is the way a client should behave. So if our needs are tied to our client's words, there could be several warning signs. We will look at several of them. Relying on a client's presence or praise to elevate how you feel about yourself. So if the client had a good counseling relationship, definitely they would talk about it. Definitely they would be thankful to you. Definitely they would show your gratitude. Definitely they would show the gratitude towards you. That's definitely fine, and you would feel good about it. That's also definitely fine. But you are more into it, you would suppose that a client had a significant improvement in your client therapist relationship, and you are asking for a feedback to that particular client. Please wait a second. Okay, Sorry for that. So if you're asking feedback to only clients who had improvement, that signifies something. That signifies that your self-esteem is dependent on the client's words. So only to the clients who have had improvement, you are asking for the feedback. Or you would engage in rescue fantasies. Rescue fantasies in the sense, okay, that's something we all have engaged in while we were children. Like being a sixth standard student, you would fantasize like rescuing your classmates from a terrorist attack or rescuing your family members from a robbery. You would fantasize like that. But when it comes to a client therapist relationship, you would a rescue fantasy would be generally like this. A client who is in a devastating situation, the client is in a very problematic situation. The client approached several psychologists, none of them could improve the situation. So the client is in really a hopeless situation, and the client finally comes to you, and you just wonder to the client. You are the only psychologist who could rescue that client. If ever one of us are engaging in the kind of fantasies, it uh, it gives a warning sign that our self-esteem is dependent upon what the clients say, or our self-esteem. We are so much in need of improving our self-esteem. Definitely, and again, please keep in mind that I'm not saying anything against having a self-esteem or others' need for approval. That's always something every human being requires. That's every human being's right to have their need for approval. But beyond that, I'm talking about cases where it is beyond that normal need for approval. So you would engage in rescue fantasies. Or apart from that, there are other factors, like maybe you had a client who's maybe you had client who's a government official, who's a high ranking government official. Maybe you had a client who's a doctor in that area, who's a famous doctor in that area, or the son of that doctor. So that doctor also had visited you. You had exchanged words. Or you had a client who's a famous lawyer in Supreme Court. Or okay, having these high respected or high status, high official status clients is definitely a good thing. But if you are if you have a tendency to reveal this aspects in front of others, in front of other crowd, in front of other professionals, or if you have the tendency to reveal your achievements or this client reports to in front of other clients, that is specifically a sign that you are trying to, in simple terms, trying to showing off. So that's another warning sign. You're trying to enhance your self-esteem in front of others, and that's something generally every client would also notice. Suppose I'm a client, I'm a therapist. A client comes to me, and apart from showing my credentials, it's very necessary that I reveal my credentials to every client, because I must make them believe that I'm qualified to give them therapy. So apart from that, if I'm talking more about my achievements, apart from if I'm talking more about my achievements, my career prospect, where I worked, I'm revealing about my other. If I've had any famous clients, I'm revealing about them to the set client. So from this, the client would definitely make an impression that I'm looking to brag about myself. So that's definitely not the aim of the session. And if I'm saying like this, certain clients would appreciate me for that. Other clients wouldn't. Other clients wouldn't compliment me. Like I said, if 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 a client situation improves significantly with my therapy, the client would compliment me. That's definitely a good thing. But we can't always expect the client to compliment us. A client would be happy about it, but there could be a client. The particular client thinks that, okay, my situation has improved. The counselor has helped me, but that's his duty to do so. I am paying him, he's not doing that for free. So there's nothing to compliment more towards that client counselor. So the client can definitely think like that. That's their wish. They may not compliment you as you expect them to. So in that case, that would affect your approach towards the client. If you expect your client to compliment you for everything and they are not complimenting, that would definitely affect the client therapist relationship. You would feel something negative about the client. You wouldn't approach to the client in a positive way. So these are the warning signs if your self-esteem is dependent upon the client's feedback, or if you're looking to uh, improve your self-esteem in front of clients. Again, next point is expecting the client to fulfill your personal or social needs. This is somewhere related. Okay, when I talk about these warning signs, these are not necessarily exclusive warning signs. This could be intertwined. One could be related to the other. Here, expecting the client to fulfill your personal or social needs, anticipating that a client will offer favor for their services. So you have a client. The client is a furniture store owner. You recently moved into a new apartment. You need some good furniture. So you're not directly asking for that client to help. You want that client to help you. So you're saying, okay, you would casually talk about the situation. You would somewhere you would you maybe you had to go early. Maybe you arrived late. So you would put the situation into that. Into that conversation between you and client. You would say that, okay, yeah, I moved in recently, so I had to look for good furniture showrooms in and around town. So you are expecting that after you say this, the client would say, okay, I would help you because I own a furniture store. So that is something where you expect your client to fulfill your personal needs. And definitely that's an unethical practice, because it's clearly everywhere it's clearly mentioned that beyond giving your service to the client, beyond taking fees from your client for the service you have provided, you can't have any other relationship with your client. You can't cross the boundary. You can't accept any gift from the client, or you cannot take any favors or offers from your client. So if you're anticipating that the client will offer help, in this case you are not directly asking for help. You are just mentioning that you are in need of this service, and you are expecting that client would help you. In this case, if the client says that, okay, I own furniture store, I will help you with that, you would be very happy. You would be very happy with that client. Just in case think that that client is not uh, responding the way you expected, the client just notes you and continues with the session. This would definitely affect your relationship with the client, because you expected the client would respond in a certain way, but the client did not. This would further affect, you would have a negative attitude towards the client. This would affect again the therapeutic relationship between the client and counselor. One another point is feeling jealous or envious of a client's other close relationships or life circumstances. So again, here, if your client is having a relationship with other high status individuals, maybe famous politicians, you had a client who's having a good relationship with a politician, maybe a relative of a famous politician, maybe keep it as an MLA. The client you had is the brother of an MLA in nearby constituency, or he has connections with high government officials. If you are envious of that, or if you are thinking that, okay, that client is really, what to say, um, okay, that client is really having a good life, or if you are having uh, envy towards that client for this relationships, that's again you are maybe, if you find that, you would try to take advantage of that, if you ever think that. So if you have a client and the client is having certain relationships toward with high status individuals, and if you feel jealousy or envy of that, that's definitely a warning sign, because in future or in course of that therapy, there's it is highly likely that you might try to take advantage of it. I'm not saying that you would, you might feel that you would want to take advantage of it, or you would feel that that's really they're really in a better position. So that's again a warning sign. If you feel if you are envious of a client's relationship with others, that's again a warning sign that you should check on. Then I would like to know the time limit of the session. Can someone please, can the organizers please respond to me? How many more minutes do I have?
Good evening, sir. This is Dr. Salim. One of yes, Chandrama, you can go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's usually an hour, Mr. Abhineet.
Okay, fine. Okay, I
So
believe I
it's
have 10
been
minutes
like
more, right?
yeah, we have got 10 minutes more. You can take 10 minutes more if you
Fine,
want.
fine. Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me see. Okay, I have 5 more slides at least. Okay, next again, fear of being rejected or a client terminating a therapy. So this is you may have the fear of being rejected by a client, or you may have fear when a client is terminating a therapy. This could be for several reasons. One is financial gain. If a client is terminating therapy, that would affect your income. That could be one aspect. Other aspect could be maybe the gain you intend is not always financial. It could be emotional also. It is always not the case that the client is dependent upon the counselor. The counselor could also depend upon the client. The counselor could, maybe the counselor could resonate with the client. Maybe the counselor could identify, or maybe the counselor could relate with the client. So having a 1 hour session was a good time for the counselor. So in some way or the other, the counselor becomes dependent on the client. So in that case, in case if ever you have that fear of being rejected, or if ever you have that fear of the client terminating therapy, there could be several warning signs. One thing is, you would encourage the client's dependence on you. That is, you would want the client to entirely depend on you, so that the sessions wouldn't end so soon. And again, this is definitely a breach of the very basic ethical principle, respect autonomy of the clients. You can suggest to clients to do you can suggest to clients some solutions, but always the solution, the choice is within the client. So if so that is, we are respecting the autonomy of the client. So if ever you are encouraging the client to depend upon you, it means that you have a fear of rejection, or you are expecting some kind of gain from the client. Or if you hear that a client could end the therapy, or if you hear that a client could terminate the therapy, that is that creates anxiety in you, that creates that creates fear in you. That's again a symbol of fear of being rejected, or that's again a symbol of you are in some way attached to the client, or you are looking for a personal or financial gain with that relationship. So it's you see, every psychologist may not be possible to deal with every client, and every client may not find all psychologists suitable. It's always not, it's all that would never happen, because there would be particular clients for whom a particular kind of therapy would be helpful, a particular approach would be helpful. Some clients would be much some clients would be looking forward to a client-centered therapy. They would be wanting constant reassurance from their therapist. Or some kind of clients would be more rational. They want to understand what is the cognitive distortions they are having, what are the automatic thoughts they are having. Some clients would be looking for that. So and as psychologists, we would also be holding to a particular school of thought. So definitely this could happen, that the client is not being satisfied with the therapy. They would want to change the therapy. That's definitely natural, and you have to respect that, because it's always the client's choice, it's always the client's decision. And if that decision is some way affecting you, that if that client's decision to terminate therapy is making you fearful, or you dread that, or you do not want that to happen, that means that you are looking for something else from that counselor client relationship. then negative feelings towards the client. I don't think I need to explain that much, because if you have negative feelings towards a client, you would not be happy if a client is non-compliant. Like you suggest them some methods, or you suggest them to act like this. I'm not saying advice. You suggest them particular methods, and they say that okay, I better go with the other plan. The client is not agreeing to your choice of action, and you do not like that, or you realize that the values of your client is very opposite to that of yours, or your political your political values and your client's political values are nearly extremes of each other. Uh, this could lead to negative feelings towards your client. And again, in this case, we cannot always be objective in this case. uh, Definitely we can say that you should respect your client for what they are. You shouldn't be judgmental of them. You shouldn't be looking towards their values or politics. That's not your concern. They approached you for a particular problem. Your duty is to deal with that problem. You shouldn't be looking at their values or politics, unless that is related to the therapy, or unless that is helping your treatment. But that need not always happen in reality, because suppose you have a client, hypothetically consider the client is male. That client talks very badly about women. Maybe he calls his wife as slut or bitch, or he disrespects you. He he sits in front of you as if he has the authority. He does not groom well. He does not dress well. He unbuttons his shirt during the therapy session. He tries to mock you. So in this case, it is very difficult to not have a negative feeling towards a client. It is very difficult to be non-judgmental towards these clients. So being practically, when we look at these situations, it's definitely very difficult to maintain a non-judgmental attitude in this case. But definitely we have to try. And even if we are having negative attitudes, and if we find that these sessions are not going forward, or no improvement is happening with the client, definitely we must forward or refer the client to somebody else. I have 3 more minutes. Okay, I would just talk about the last 2 points. Okay, the personal life contamination of professional performance. So we are leading 2 lives: professional life and personal life. The personal the situations of our personal life could definitely engage in our professional life, and that could definitely affect other human being. We are working in a healthcare service. We are directly engaging with other human beings. So if we are having a personal problem, if you're having a personal crisis, that could definitely indulge in our professional relationship with others. The first and foremost thing is, we fail to notice that we are having a problem. Suppose I'm going through a divorce, and I fail to notice how that divorce is affecting my my career, or my relationship with clients. I'm going through a divorce, so when my clients come, I'm looking at my prospective partners. I'm looking at my clients in such a way that can this client be my partner? I'm looking at them in such a way that whether my values and their values get along with each other. So if I fail to notice that I am involving my personal life difficulties into my professional life, that's again a warning sign. And another thing is, if you're having a personal life issue, or if you're having a crisis in your personal life, you probably would have difficulty in hearing to what your clients are saying. Maybe you are an excellent listener, but at that particular point of time, or at that particular period of your life, you find it difficult. You fail to find the details of your clients. Maybe you are an excellent taker of non-verbal cues. You would very much easily understand it. You can very much easily interpret them. But in this case, you are going through a family crisis and you cannot concentrate on it, you cannot take on the nonverbal cues which they are showing. In that case, you must identify that I am failing to attend to what my client is saying. Or if you feel that you are going through, if you feel that you are taking your own frustrations on your client, maybe like I said, you are going through a divorce, you find a client, one of your client is going through the divorce, and you can relate to that client as your partner or as your spouse. So you interchange their roles. You find that client is really your wife, so you take on your frustrations on your client. Again, if you are doing this kind of actions, that would definitely indicate a warning sign that something wrong is happening with your professional life as a psychologist. Or if you do not want to engage in sessions, so normally you are an enthusiastic psychologist, you are very much interested to hear your clients, you are very much interested in helping them heal their problems, but at a point of time, you do not want to attend to any sessions. You're trying how I can extend this session, or how I can postpone this session. You would tell them that I'm not feeling well, so you would find reasons to postpone your sessions. So if ever you feel that you do not want to have sessions, or you do not want to work for this period, that means that something is bothering you personally, something in your personal life is bothering you, and that is affecting your professional life. And that's definitely the time we should take a professional help. We should take professional help from another psychologist or psychotherapist. So that are some of the general warning signs that there could be an ethical violation regarding our professional life. Now I'd like to talk very little bit about some general red flags. So you had attended this session, you had heard several of the warning signs that could necessarily arise in your counseling session. So just hypothetically think that one of your colleague also, one of your trusted colleague also attended this session. So both of you decide that okay, your colleague tells you that okay, we'll discuss each of these points one by one with respect to our professional life. So both of you attended this session, and both of you decides that the other colleague tells you that okay, we can discuss each of the points with respect to our professional life. And if you are not interested in it, or if you're uncomfortable with that discussion, definitely that indicates some of these points has invoked an uncomfortable feeling in you. So just think about it hypothetically. You can think about it. You can just think about it and understand if you will you be comfortable in sharing. Will you be comfortable in sharing these points with any of your trusted other colleagues or trusted other psychologists regarding your regarding your professional life as a psychologist? So that's one point. And even if you find that there is something you have found that there are some warning signs which has happened in your professional life, that's definitely I would say that's a good thing, because you are aware of it, you have noticed it, and now you have the opportunity to change it. Being frank, I have had several of the warning signs at some point or the other. What helped me is I was aware of it. I didn't allow it to get to an extent where I couldn't move out of it. That's what something would help us, because as I said earlier, we are all susceptible to this possible humanly error, or we all have those emotions which could lead us to those temptations. But being aware of it will definitely help us. So just think of it. Would you be comfortable in discussing these points with respect to your professional life? And again, being ignorant about ethical guidelines. If you think that okay, in India we don't have any ethics committee, in India we don't have any governance council. If you think that just because of that I don't have to think much about ethics, that's definitely a much brighter red flag, I would say, that you should check on your ethics because that could possibly exploit the client or that could possibly do harm to the client. And if you believe that these issues raised would never apply to you, that's again a red flag because these could be applicable to everyone. So that are some general red flags or that are some general warning signs that would show up in your professional life that could possibly lead to an ethical violation. So apart from this, I have added some more slides regarding how to make an ethical decision in case we had time. So I believe I've already taken 5 minutes extra. So I'll wind up my presentation with this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abhineet. It was really, really wonderful. You know, the content was too good. Very impressive presentation, in my opinion. And, you know, it was like all in one. You know, we had all the information about ethics and being a psychologist and all that stuff. Too good. Thank you very much. And now we will take up some quick questions from the participants. So I request you all to unmute your mics one by one if you have any questions to discuss with Mr. Abhineet, or put your questions in the chat box, we can discuss. Thank you.
I would also appreciate it some of you can share your experience as psychologists regarding ethics.
Good evening, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for a very awesome session, sir. It was very informative and very much needed session. Thank you, sir. In many cases, the clients want us to resolve their personal issue. That is, they want us to be the mouthpiece to resolve whatever they want to say, and they are unable to communicate with their family members. They want us to be the mouthpiece, and they want us to, convey the decision they have made. We are just a channel for them. How do we put a stop to these issues?
I was not clear with that question. Could you be more specific about it? Or if someone understood it better, could someone tell me what the question was?
This is Chandra here, Mr. Abhineet. It
Okay.
was Madam Vijay Priya asking you the question. She's saying like the client wants the therapist to be a mediator to convey things to the family members.
Okay, so in that case, what can we do? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Well, I would say that apart from talking about their decisions, I would say as a counselor or a psychologist, we must be working on the relationship, or we must be working on the ground reason why the particular client is unable to discuss discuss their decisions with the family. So in this case, we are as psychologist, we are not therefore we are not there to give them a job, or we are not like you said, we are not a channel for them to act as a mediator between them and their family. So in case someone wants the psychologist to talk with the family, I would say in certain cases that would be necessary, I would say, because there could be a big generation gap between the family and the particular set client. So in that case, maybe the counselor is maybe a counselor would be a better person to talk with the family. Or in other case, apart from conveying what the client has to say towards the family, apart from that, the counselor can work more on improving the relationship, improving the situation between the client and the family, so that the next time the client wants to convey something to the family, they do not have to come to a psychologist.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or feedback, or we got a question on the chat box? Other than handing over the therapy to the other therapist, what are the other ways by which we can handle such situations?
Such situations means Which situations?
I hope this is what she meant. Like, see, you have a situation that you can't handle, maybe, and you try to hand over that to the other therapist. Instead of doing that, is there any ways that we can try on our own to sort it out?
Okay.
Anita, ma'am, am I right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, I would like to
Thank
say
you.
that anytime when we are in a confusion, we must go to the basics. So it's not something strictly adhering to a profession of psychology, be it your personal life, be it any profession. If you are in a confusion regarding taking a decision, you must definitely go down to the basics. So when it comes to ethics, we should go down to the basic ethical principles. So the first and foremost thing is doing good to the client. So you should be always doing good to the client. Even if you can't do anything good to the client, come to the second point, do no harm. Even if you are not, you can work along with the client to do good to the client, but even if that's not happening, you should never do harm to the client. So I cannot say in one word how can we handle such situations. So in that case, if you are continuing with the session, you can look upon this aspect like, am I harming the client in any way? Am I harming the client financially? Am I taking charge from the client after being sure that I can't do anything about it, or I'm in a situation that I can't have a objective relationship have an objective relationship with this client anymore. In that case, you are not doing any good to the client. So I would say that in that case, you can refer to the client, you can refer to others, and always you need not always, we may not get solutions at first itself. We would work upon with the client. So if you feel that, if you have a justification that you can continue the session with the client, you can work it out, you have the confidence, you have the theoretical base for that, and you have the experience for it, you can definitely again work it out with the client. You can discuss it with colleagues. That's definitely something that would help us much better as psychologists, helping us with talking with more experienced psychologists in the field. So I would say, in general, I would say that that's something we can resort to when we are facing a difficult situation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
How to empathize with a client without how to empathize with a client without becoming pathetic. Okay, I don't know how to answer that, how to empathize with client. I would suggest that there's a book written by Gerard Egan, The Skilled Helper. In that book, he mentions about being how to empathize, and he talks about several counseling skills, and mostly that's not just talking about what are the counseling skills. In that they are talking they're explaining their counseling skills with respect to particular situation, or with respect to how can we show empathy towards the client, because the most important factor is the client should feel the empathy we are showing towards them. So I would suggest you to read The Skilled Helper Model by Gerard Egan, or I would be very happy if someone could help me with that.
I think the participant is convinced with your answer. Is this anyone who want to talk now?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Can I ask question, ma'am?
Yeah, please, ma'am.
Okay. Sir, you have explained everything very well. I can easily understand the relationship between the therapist and the client, sir. My small question is, one group of people asked me to do a therapy for the substance abuse clients. In that case, they want me to do the group therapy as well as one-to-one therapy. At that time, what type of therapy I would prefer to do first? Group therapy or one-to-one therapy for the
Definitely,
substance abuse
definitely,
people?
definitely, I would suggest individual therapy because in any case, I don't think group therapy would be beneficial at first. Normally, we suggest group therapy is because it would help the clients to understand that okay, there are many people out there who are like me. There are someone with whom I can resonate with. So that's something why we suggest group therapy. But initially, I think we should understand more about each client. So generally, we have some self-help groups where they generally sit together and talk about things. But when it comes to a therapeutic session, again. Okay, I would finish this. When it comes to a therapeutic session, I think it is important for the psychologist to know each of the client specifically, and in a group therapy, the counselor is the one who's leading the session. The counselor must be the one who's handling the session. So unless and until you don't know each of the participant in depth, in specific about each of the participant, you wouldn't be able to handle the session, and also you don't know how comfortable they would be in that group session. So maybe one particular participant was with regarding to this substance abuse, they might have faced some other abuse, or they might have faced some other problems which makes them fearful to face face public, or fearful to talk in front of public. So I think those are some concerns which you should understand, you should address first. You should make sure that there is a certain rules followed for the group sessions. You should make sure that each client is comfortable with the group session, and so. And again,
Okay.
this is not very, I can never say that these are some black and white solutions. Ethics is always a gray area. I don't know in detail about that specific situation. So this is something I would suggest there could definitely be another possible solution to it.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abhineet, for your, detailed and very clear answering to the questions. And thank you all the participants for interacting with the resource person. So now I request Dr. Salim, our core team member, to give his words of thanks on behalf of all of us. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chandra ma'am, for giving the opportunity to give the vote of thanks. So it was very wonderful session today. We had it uh, by Abhineet. So the red flags actually. So sir, it was a very nice and wonderful session, and I think in the whole session, this is the unique topic I can say, and you very well explained general red flags and particularly about the roles, responsibilities, boundaries, all those red flags. And you clearly mentioned about the APA, American Psychological Association guidelines. So in overall, I think if any termination or any clients sessions up to the 5 years, we should not keep the contact, personal contact. That is the things bottom line of bottom line you said. I believe that. So after that, maybe we can have a like friendship or whatever the relationship. That is the point to be noted. And there are a lot of warning signs you explained today. Maybe these warning signs may lead to the ethical violations. So we should be clear cut. We should have the boundary lines, particularly about having the relationship with the client and the therapist, and rationalizing boundary crossing, and the fearing of being rejected, and the negative feelings, and personal life contaminations. So we should be having the clear cut idea. So it will. There are a lot of inputs or like warning signs. We said, for example, the clients will do the favor. Um, they will anticipating some favor or services. It is definitely will be them even like personal need or social need. So definitely it will lead to the ethical violation. Of course, our personal ambitions and financial gains expecting from the clients, And another aspect you said, taking our own personal frustration to the client. That also would be the warning signs. So we have to be careful on either side. Of course, in question and answer, there are a lot of Kanha Pradha madam asked I think a lot of clarification about not Kanha Pradha. Before that, some of one participant they asked about how to handle, how to communicate with the message to the clients, attender or client relative, all those things. So it was a very nice clarification. And always we have to maintain that even coming to the for example, family counseling, if they are coming for the separation also, always we have to make a point that as a psychologist counselor, they are not a matchmaker. They have to give the ground reality and they have to the clear cut scenario picture, whatever the things. They have to take their own decision. So if their client come for the separation, we have to keep in mind that we are not the matchmaker. We are not doing that role. We have to give the, we have to give our opinion. We are not a decision maker. So they have to take their own decision. That is the boundary, I can say. So very good, sir. It was a very wonderful session. I would like to thank you on behalf of American College Madurai and MS Chellamuthi Institute Madurai and Madras School of Social Work Chennai and Red Pond Educational Psychological Research Center Madurai and Psycho-Oncological Association Turkey. Thank you all to the participants. Thank you, Abhinit sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, one and all. See you tomorrow in another session, the same time, the same link. Until then, it's bye-bye and good night. Thank you, Mr. Abhinay.